Hello and welcome to our AWS migration series. In this section, we will talk about AWS infrastructure as service, which is also known as the EC2 instances, and that is going to be one of the cornerstone, either directly or indirectly, of your cloud migration projects, right? So that let's get started. It is called EC2 Elastic Computing, cluster. So AWS Elastic Computing Service or EC2 is the service we can use to create the virtual machine of various sizes and various operating system to meet our needs. If you need a Ubuntu, it is available. If you need a Ubuntu of different versions, it is available. If you need a Red Hat, if you need a Windows, if you need a Fedora, everything is available. And if they are not, you might search the AWS community for custom images, or you can bring your own, right? So what they're used for: people install web servers, application servers, databases when they do not like the RDS, batch job servers on AWS EC2 instances. Besides, when you choose not to deploy your application to the AWS EC2 instance, but you choose to deploy them on AWS ECS, Elastic Container Service, or EKS, which is Kubernetes, the underlying nodes that power these container orchestration services are basically EC2 instances, right? So, as I said, even if you do not directly use EC2 instances, whenever you are deploying Docker images, you are actually using EC2 instances, because those are the guys that become the worker nodes or master nodes in container orchestration services, right? So let's move on. So here is the first screen. If you go to the AWS management console, if you click on EC2 instances, this is the first screen you will see. And when you click on the launch instance, then AWS will take you to the second instance, which is where you can choose operating system like Amazon Linux or Red Hat or Ubuntu or SUSE Linux. And then once you select, depending on the architecture, then AWS will take you to this. Here, as you can see, this T2 micro, T2 medium, T2 large, all these are Amazon machine image types, and then they are the short form. So each one of them denote how many virtual CPUs they have, how much memory they have, what is the internal storage and network capacity. So you can study. I would suggest, do not study when you really need. You need to study ahead of time what your application will basically need. If your application is memory intensive, you might need a different EC2. If your application is CPU intensive, then you might need a different EC2 instance type. So study a little bit, and then there is cost associated. That is also keenly important. You should be aware of the cost as well. And then when you are decided, come to this screen again. And then once you choose that, this is the instance details, right? The first thing, you will specify how many instances you will need, and then the purchasing option. We will talk about spot, reserve, and other instances in a separate video. For the time being, here you can specify network. This is a default network. As you can see here, normally people for serious needs choose their custom network, and then once you choose the default or custom VPC, this subnet drop down will be populated, and you need to choose a subnet. Auto assign public IP is, if you choose that, then AWS will assign a public IP when creating your instance. Now, AWS public IP, there's a little bit I need to say here. The public IP, it can be used while accessing the EC2 instance from the internet, but whenever you are restarting the EC2 instance, the public IP will change. So for that, AWS has a different concept called Elastic IP, and you can create Elastic IP irrespective of outside of EC2 instances, and then Elastic IP you can assign to your EC2 instance. Elastic IP actually cost money, and there is a limitation how many you can have per account. And last but not the least, Elastic IP do not get refreshed. So Elastic, if you really want a static web interface, then Elastic IP is the way to go, right? So placement group is whether you have a placement group that these EC2 instance will be placed in the same availability zone along with other EC2 instances, or probably on the same hardware. So that's what the concept of placement group. As you can see, using the placement group, you can keep the network latency low between multiple EC2 instances. Capacity preservation, yes, this is high level. Then IAM role, as I talked about. So this role, when you assign a role to your EC2 instance, what happens is you will not be running inside the EC2 instance. Your application will be running. Suppose your application will need to access the AWS RDS and AWS S3. So what you will do, you will create a role ahead of time and you will assign that role. The role has the permission to access RDS, the role has the permission to access S3. So any application running on the EC2 instance, if the EC2 instance has that role, will automatically assume the role that has the RDS and S3 instance. Once you assign the role, you can dynamically change permission, add more permission, revoke permission. So that's not an issue, but you need to assign a role at this point here. Shutdown behavior, when you shut down, will it stop or will it terminate? That's what it says. Now enable termination protection, you can check this box and AWS will not let you terminate this instance or let any other script terminate this instance unless you specifically override the termination protection. Monitoring, if you want detailed monitoring, your CloudWatch, we will talk about CloudWatch a little bit later. CloudWatch will console will show detailed statistics. And tenancy, obviously you do not want dedicated. Dedicated is a way more costly than shared. Shared is good. And elastic interface, you do not at this time need an elastic interface, right? So this is the instance details page. Next one is you add a storage here. Now this storage is ephemeral, right? So this storage is the instance storage, and whenever you are restarting, it will be all the content will be deleted, right? So you need to add an EBS volume which retains its contents, so that's separate. But all EC2 instances disk are ephemeral. When I say ephemeral, when they restart, the contents are taken away, right? Keep that in mind. Now this one is a tag screen. You need to, if you want tag your EC2 instance. This is very important. A lot of production setup, what they do, they force their developers and engineers to tag the EC2 instance so that they can know that if that EC2 instance is used for a production purpose or learning or running a dev instance or QA instance. So time to time they can take corrective actions. So that's what the tag is important. The next one is security group. Now we talked about network NSCL, that's the network layer security. This is the instance layer security. Here you can, everything is software. The security group acting like a instance level firewall. So you can see, as you can see, I have added TCP/22, which is the SSH. You can, suppose your application is listening to port 80, so you can open HTTP traffic on port 80. Now this one, once you assign an existing security group or create a new security group, that will be given a name, and you can add or remove rules from the security group later on, but you need to assign a security group here. There is no other option. Either you have to create a new security group or you have to choose an existing one, right? And as I said, security group is a collection of rules for controlling traffic going into the instance and coming out of the instance, right? Now this one is the review page, and so you will review everything that you have chosen here, and then finally you will come to, when you say launch, here you will choose a key pair. that you need to download. The key pair is needed whenever you need to SSH from your Mac or Windows using PuTTY or Linux VM. That key pair, it's a PM file, is needed from your SSH command. So if you forget to download this key pair, then there is a very little you can do. You need to delete the instance and create a new one. So please remember, you need to download these, and now there are two options. Either you can choose an existing key pair. A lot of people do, they create a key pair ahead of time, and then use the key pair in multiple EC2 instances. That's the normal practice, but it's up to you. And then so in that case, if you are, there is a small advantage if you create an key pair ahead of time and download it ahead of time, then you don't need to download it for each and every EC2 instance, right? And then this is where we will end. So we have covered AWS infrastructure as service, EC2 instances, how you can create using admin console. Let me tell you two other things. You can create EC2 instances through CloudFormation, which is a little advanced, and you can create EC2 instances through CLI. Besides, last but not the least, you can still create EC2 instances through your chosen SDK. If you choose Java, if you choose Ruby, if you choose Python, all SDKs are available to create EC2 instances. So that's where we will stop. Let me know, comment your questions. I will try to answer them as soon as possible. And then if you like the migration series, please subscribe. Whenever I upload the video, you will get notified. Thank you. Thanks for listening.